Hello everyone, I know I made a similar video not a long time ago, but I wanted to add a few things that I forgot to mention or didn't thought about that during my Elden Ring DLC video. Okay, let's start with the most popular myth about this DLC, hardcore. Let me ask you one very obvious and simple question. Which bosses do you consider to be hard in this DLC? Even while rewatching my video footages, among all these DLC bosses, the only hard bosses besides Radon of course, who is just a disbalanced garbage that has zero justifying, the only hard boss is Mesmer. Well, okay, and also Bale if you don't use magical anti-dragon sword. You might ask, how is this possible while there are so many videos about random YouTubers who suffered on many DLC bosses? Well, first of all, I don't want to offend anyone, but 95% of all those YouTubers are as good and skilled as, average Yumi mains. If you know, you know. And secondly, these bosses aren't hard because they are hard. They aren't hard because they have some, complicated or hard to memorizable moveset. They are artificially made to be hard. What I mean by that? Well, let's take for example Fume Knight from Dark Souls 2. In my opinion, he is one of the, if not the hardest boss among all Souls games. He killed me 50 times and yeah, I raged, but I never even once had a feeling that this boss is unfair or somehow disbalanced. I always did a reasonable amount of damage, he also did a reasonable amount of damage, and I could always see his hits, and if I got hit or if I died, this means that I deserved it. But in Elden Ring's DLC, I always had a feeling that these bosses aren't the, most fair ones. First of all, their hitboxes and grab attacks are no better, if not actually worse, than hitboxes in Dark Souls 2 will base ATV. Secondly, they have just stupidly high amount of health. Many of their moves animations are very similar to each other. They have delay hits in mid combos that can fuck up your day, and they just do unreasonable amount of damage, even to a dude in the heaviest armor. Unless you use all defensive amulets, consumables and other stuff, any boss will just one-shot you with their one dumb anime hit. The best examples of this are Midra, Hog Rider, and of course Radan. These bosses aren't hard but fair bosses. These bosses are hard because A. They have Godzilla level health bar, and B. Your damage and damage reduction is very low because of one very good and needed feature, on which I will talk about a bit later. Also, I don't know which monkey brain famous YouTuber said this first, but many people for some reason think that casuals and new players cry because this DLC is way too hard. And no, you monkeys. Casuals and new players are not the ones who say that this DLC is unbalanced. It's literally the opposite of that. The ones who say that this DLC is unbalanced are people who don't choose bosses and fight them solo. What I mean by that? Well, let's talk about, quote, you don't use all features that this game gives you. In the beginning, I honestly had no idea what these people even mean by that, but then I realized, oh, they mean a shitload of buffs and summons. First of all dear, you should use all game's mechanics spammers. You guys do realize that if you spend 2 min on buffs before you fight a boss, you will demolish any boss in any other game, right? The difference between, for example, Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring is that even without a lot of buffs, you would always do a good amount of damage and you won't get one-shotted. But in Elden Ring DLC, if you won't use all these buffs, you will just do a pathetically low amount of damage while you will get two-shotted. In previous Souls games, I only used buffs on New Game Plus, in which bosses have far more health and damage than on New Game. But in Elden Ring, and especially in DLC, even on New Game, you just do a joke amount of damage while dying in 2 hits from every homeless. But as it appeared, many people aren't talking about things like buffs, amulets, weapons, crimson tears, and other stuff. These people by "you don't use all mechanics" 90% of the time means summon, aka mimic tier. And I said about this very lightly in this video, so let's talk about summons in details and why they are a huge problem. Summons not only are most broken disbalanced mechanic among all Souls game, they are well, how to say it properly, best difficulty negators I would say. Summons that aren't a pathetic garbages not only can do a decent amount of damage, they can distract, poise break, or put status effect on bosses, aka bleed rot and other stuff. Yeah, most summons are garbage. Trust me, I tested most of them, but despite that, they did one very important job. They distracted the bosses, which allowed me to hit the bosses without them being able to punish me. And I won't even want to talk about Mimic TR, that allows you to just finger butthole any boss in this game in less than a minute. This game is very friendly towards casual players because you can always use summons and especially Mimic TR and just gangbang any boss. Once again, the ones who sell this DLC is unbalanced are people who don't use summons. People who just like me like to fight bosses solo are suffering in this DLC because bosses were designed to fight with summons, and that's why bosses have so many AoE hits, that's why they are so aggressive, and that's why they are so tanky. They are designed to fight multiple enemies at once. You might say, well, if you don't use summons, that's your problem, no? And no, not really. That's not how it works. If you think that you killed a boss while your summon did 40-50% of damage to boss while they were constantly taking bosses hits, I have a bad news for you. You never even fought bosses for the first place if you use summons. And no, summons aren't the same as summoning other players, because if you summon another player, bosses will be stronger, they will have more health and poise, but when you use summons, bosses don't become stronger. You and your summons can just gangbang any boss in this game and also in this DLC, besides, well, Radan, okay? Because everything besides Mimic Tier against Radan is useless garbage. And yes, I also use the summons and especially Mimic, but I killed these bosses bold will and without summons, and I can tell you that summons make any boss 3 times easier. And okay, if someone said something like, I don't care about anything, this DLC is unbalanced and I use summons because I don't want to suffer on a dumb bosses that spam our one-shot hits, or I just want to beat this DLC with summons once and never play it again. If someone says something like that, sure, no problem. But when people who didn't even fought the bosses and I killed the bosses for them talk bullshit such as this DLC is fine, balance is fine, bosses having so much health is also fine, bosses movesets are fine, the fact that bosses just spam you will 10 hit anime wombo combos is also fine. Yeah, no shit that it's fine, because when you have your buddy next to you that does almost as much damage as you while he can tank bosses without any problem, which allows you to hit bosses without them being able to punish you. Have you ever wondered why Elden Ring is so popular despite the fact that it's a Souls game, a genre which many people consider as a super duper hardcore game for super duper tryhards? The answer to it is very obvious: summons. Casuals don't care about anything. They will use summons, aka mimic, will turn bosses apart in 1 minute and will never play Elden Ring again. But people who just like me like to replay this game solo without any help while playing this DLC will suffer on a dumb bosses with hyper aggression that spam you will one-shot anime AoE hits while they have Godzilla level health bar. Now let's talk about scadutree feature in details. Many people say that this feature was added because game devs wanted to nerf OP overlevel players, and lastly, this content is optional.
You serious?
Oy. Okay, let's start with the optional content. I will explain this as simply as possible so that even the dumbest Elden Ring fanboy will understand. Let's talk about damage reduction both in the main game and in this DLC. In the main game, will Dragon Chest Amulet, and in the tankiest armor, I have 50 physical damage reduction. Now let's see how much damage reduction I have in this DLC without any armor with all scadutree. 51. Let's use a quick math. 50 plus 51 is 101. But guess what? In this DLC, with all 50 scadutree and with the tankiest armor, I have only 76 physical damage reduction. This means that in this DLC, without all 3 fragments in the tankiest armor, I have a 26 physical damage reduction. Now let's talk about damage. I will take a regular sword without any buffs with 0, 5, 10, 15 and 20 scadutree fragments. And let's look at the numbers. Yeah, in this DLC, you do twice more damage if you have all scadutree fragments. What this all means? Well, this means that playing without all 50 magical pools in this DLC is equivalent of fighting a Mog in the main game while you have a Claymore on plus 10, while you have 20 vigor and strength. Yeah, optional my ass. If you won't have 3 level at least on 15, you are fucked. Now let's talk about the myth of OP player nerfs. People who say dumb stuff like that. Do you realize that in any Souls game you could visit DLC while being over level, right? In previous games it didn't matter if you were over level or no. From software never gave even a single damn about that. You are over level, fuck you. Freed, Meteor or Fume Knight will wipe the floor with you. And have you ever wondered why they randomly added this amazing feature only in Elden Ring? Well, the answer to it is very easy. Open world. Yeah, there is no hidden philosophical message. There is no hidden Arena 51 top secret or other stuff. The only reason why From Software added this branded mechanic is because they wanted you to explore this dead empty open world. No, really, that's the only reason. Even if you look at this map, besides scadutree fragments, what this map can offer: huge empty arena in which there is absolutely nothing to do, or just stupid, boring or annoying locations that are uninteresting to explore. The only locations that are interesting to explore in this DLC are Mesmer's Castle from Hippo till the end and Dancing Lion's Castle. Others are either very short, for example Road to Radan and Relana, or are just absolutely annoying, for example Hide and Seek Swamp Arenas or Jagged Peak. Also, my big thanks to the person who decided to hide the most important thing in this DLC, in the deepest assets of this game, and especially inside basic mobs pause. I repeat this again: 3 fragments that lowers damage that the mobs and bosses do to you while boosting your own damage are hidden in basic mobs that have a pot on their head, who also are hidden in the deepest assets of this game. I know that many people will say dumb stuff such as but in the main game you found sacred trees and smithing stones. How is that any different than finding 50 fucking scadutree fragments? First of all, like I said earlier, these 3 fragments are hidden very well, unlike sacred tears and smithing stones that you can see on a map. And secondly, why should I spend my time in late game on searching magical pools in order to fight bosses? Why I can't just rush bosses without me getting absolutely demolished by these bosses? Why, when I see a fog gate, I should immediately leave it and spend a solid amount of time in order to find trees? Why I can't just visit the boss and fight him normally like I did in Dark Souls and in Bloodborne DLC? Can any of you monkeys who defend this absolutely braindead mechanic explain to me without a random fairy tales why I should find 50 trees in order to fight bosses without them one-shotting me from full health in one hit? And also, all those people who justify tree mechanic are a very hypocrite people. Well, okay, Elden Ring fanboys by default are a huge hypocrites, but people who defend this mechanic are just yikes, it's the last stage. Why I say that? Well, do you guys remember a wonderful game named Wulong? F-tier Souls-like game, which had one very sassy feature. In this game, in order to make bosses easier and fightable, you should find and put flags before you fight the boss. And the more flags you had, the easier the boss was. And absolutely every single person who played this game called this mechanic pure garbage. But for some reason, these same people justify tree fragment system, which is very funny, don't you think? Okay, once again, if From Software wanted to nerf OP players, they would give you these 3 levels just like they gave you Remembrance in Sekiro. For example, you are tryharding Relana, you can see that you are suffering. You could ignore her for a while and kill Lion, and only after that fight her again. Yeah, this mechanic also would be very meh, but it's still far better than what we got in this DLC. The only reason why this game devs added this stupid mechanic is because they wanted to force you to explore this absolutely empty huge open world on which these developers for some reason spent 2 years. And to be honest with you, I really want to see what they were doing past 2 years, because A, locations are just empty, B, 80% of all mobs are from base game, and C, most bosses have movesets from previous game's bosses. Phase 2 Mesmer has some Shadow of Yarna moves, Relana is Pontiff plus Renala, Bale is 4 Dragon combination, Dancing Lion has a few 3 spirit moves, local orphan, and many more. Now let's talk about weapons. Many people say that this DLC has a good weapon variety, and if someone says that no left that he didn't even tested these weapons. Why I say that? Well, because I am the one who tested these weapons. I tested axes, spears, halberd, rapiers, blade weapons, UGS, sword plus shield, and I can guarantee you that in this DLC there are only 4 build style. First and most effective one is any fast weapon will bleed. Second one is ultra great sword weapon, because no joke, all bosses besides Radan have less poise than Margit, which allows you to just poise break them 24/7. Third, heaviest shield plus spear on bleed, and fourth, 2 great sword will jump attack amulet. Everything else in this DLC sucks ass, especially if you take weapon with one hand and use a regular R1. Trust me, this will make you sad. Unless this weapon is strength scale giant crusher or strength scale katana will bleed resin plus a shitload of buffs. And spoiler, yes, you can force any weapon type to work if you use a shitload of buffs, but in any other Souls game you could also dominate the bosses with a lot of buffs, but the difference is that in other Souls games, even without buffs, you would always do a good amount of damage, while in Elden Ring without buffs, you will suck a dick, and with buffs, big bonkers, and especially bleed weapons are just superior. Also press F to all those people who like to play as a knight with a regular sword and shield. In DLC in which bosses just spam you with 10 hit wombo combos while doing mixed damage, a regular knight build is a trash can build. Okay, let's have a conclusion once again. This DLC is pretty bad. In this DLC, besides, well, 2 or 3 good bosses and amazing locations visually, there is nothing good about this DLC. Weapon variety sucks ass, bosses are annoying pieces of shit, open world is absolutely uninteresting and dead, infinity reuses from base game and from previous games, 3 level system, disbalanced summons, and just broken balance. Yeah, I ranked this DLC at number 5 among all Souls DLC, but it's at number 5 because other 2s are somehow even worse. And before you say dumb stuff such as, in this DLC there is so much content, and if there wasn't 3 level system and open world, people would just complain that this DLC is way too small and easy. First of all, by so much content, you mean infinity reused assets, or maybe absolutely empty and uninteresting open world, in which besides 3 fragments there is nothing interesting to find, because once again, weapon variety is dog shit, and all amulets are just slightly better versions of amulets from base game, besides, okay, 3 or 4 of them. Or maybe by so much content you mean 10 remembrance bosses, in which From Software just took 2 bosses, gave him her one new magical fart that delays your character while giving you epilepsy. Or maybe you mean new basic mobs that most of the time are basically reskinned versions of base game mobs. Say hello to Mesmer soldiers who are just Godric soldiers but with one new move and different armor color. Also, by way too easy and small you mean what exactly? Elden Ring's DLC is still the easiest DLC among all Souls games because Summons aka Mimic Tier is still there, which allows you to finger butthole any DLC boss. Also, people, you do realize that Artorias DLC is also pretty small, right? But guess what? People didn't complain that this DLC is short, and especially they didn't say dumb stuff such as this DLC is good, but damn, I wish in this DLC I didn't fight bosses as soon I reached the fog gate. I wish I had to run around like a madman and search under every single rock 30 Manus balls that reduces bosses damage towards me while increasing my damage towards them. No, no one said bullshit like that. People just like me went in this DLC after finishing main game or before final boss, sucked a dick against the bosses, and then they killed them and enjoyed it. But after finishing this DLC, my thoughts weren't, yeah, it was a cool DLC. No, my thoughts were, who hired 200 plus collective year of professional game designers from Riot Games to balance this DLC. Also, I will say one line and guess which game I mean. A huge and beautiful open world with many small details, many ruins, soldier camps, outposts, and dungeons that are very similar, in which you will find a bunch of useless loot that you will never use besides 3 or 4 things. In the beginning it's cool at all, but after 5 or 10 hours you are getting bored of running around like a madman because all side quests and side content besides fighting main bosses is very similar and boring. Try to guess which game I mean and tell me if there is any difference between Assassin's Creed Valhalla and Elden Ring's DLC open world gameplay wise. Well, type what you think about my video or about DLC. With this I'll say bye bye to you and I'll see you next time.